The strength of Elias Carter, a legacy of resilience. When Elias Carter woke up that morning, he had no reason to believe it would be anything other than a typical day. Just another sunrise over his farm, another day spent working the soil, tending to his crops, and embracing the peaceful life he had always known. But fate had different plans for him. That day would become a test unlike any other, one that would push him to his limits, challenge his spirit, and reveal a truth more powerful than he could have ever imagined. It was a test of endurance, of justice, and, above all, of family. As Elias moved through his morning chores, a familiar rhythm guided his hands. The soft rustle of corn stalks, the scent of damp earth, the gentle clucking of his chickens. It was a life he cherished, one built with sweat, determination, and an unshakable connection to the land passed down through generations. But as he wiped his brow and straightened his back, something caught his attention. Two figures stood at the edge of his property. Officers. Watching him. Studying his every move with an intensity that sent an uneasy chill down his spine. At first, he told himself it was nothing, just routine patrols, officers doing their jobs. But he knew better. Their stance, their lingering stares, the hushed words they exchanged, it wasn't right. And he was about to find out just how wrong it really was. What started as a simple show of authority soon twisted into something far more dangerous. Something driven not by duty, but by greed and prejudice. Elias's story is one of courage, of unwavering resilience in the face of injustice. And it all starts here. Despite the struggles he faced, challenges that came not just from the hard work of farming but from the color of his skin, Elias Carter was no ordinary man. Beneath the exterior of a humble farmer was a history of strength, of dignity, of a legacy that would not be silenced. And soon, that legacy would come to light, shaking not just those who sought to harm him, but an entire town that would never forget his name. Before we dive deeper into this powerful journey, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you're ready to be inspired, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. A legacy rooted in the land. The morning sun stretched across the fields, casting golden light over the farm. Elias Carter moved through his daily routine with steady hands, each task second nature after a lifetime of hard work. At 76 years old, his body had slowed, but his spirit remained as strong as ever. Years of working the land had etched their mark into him, his skin weathered from countless summers, his silver hair neatly cut. As he knelt in the dirt, inspecting a row of young corn, his fingers gently brushed the tender leaves. "You're looking good this year," he murmured, satisfaction in his voice. It was a quiet moment, a moment of pride, a moment of peace. His farm wasn't vast, not by modern standards, but every inch of those 25 acres was cared for with love and dedication. The rows of crops were immaculate, the fencing sturdy, the red barn freshly painted. At the end of a long dirt driveway stood his modest white farmhouse, its porch swept clean despite the ever-present Georgia dust. This land wasn't just his livelihood. It was his legacy. His grandfather had purchased it after emancipation, and since then, it had been a symbol of perseverance and hard-earned success. Every step Elias took across those fields carried the weight of history, a connection to those who had come before him and those who would come after. Later that morning, Elias climbed into his old but well-maintained pickup truck and drove into town for supplies. As he pulled up to Carson's general store, the familiar jingle of the bell greeted him. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." James Carson, the young shopkeeper, called out. "How are those watermelons coming along?" Elias offered a rare, soft smile. "Coming along just fine. Should have the first batch ready in a couple of weeks." James grinned. "Mom's gonna be happy to hear that. Nobody grows 'em like you, Mr. Carter." As Elias moved through the store, gathering his supplies, he took note of the way people reacted to him. Some, like Mrs. Harrison, an elderly retired teacher, gave polite nods. Others, like Bill Whitaker and his teenage son, avoided eye contact, shifting away as he passed. It was subtle, but it was there, the quiet, unspoken tension that had existed in the town for as long as he could remember. James noticed, too. As he rang up Elias's purchases, he lowered his voice. "Don't mind them, Mr. Carter. Some folks just don't know how to move forward." Elias exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "Been that way all my life, son. Some things change slower than others." A father's pride, a thread unfolding. On the drive home, Elias's gaze flickered to a worn photograph tucked into the dashboard. In it, a younger version of himself stood proudly beside his son, Marcus, on the day of his FBI Academy graduation. Marcus had come a long way from the little boy who used to follow Elias around the farm, asking endless questions about the world. Now he was a high-ranking official, a man dedicated to justice. Elias's chest swelled with pride at the thought of his son's achievements. But in a town like this, drawing attention to success, especially as a black man, was a dangerous thing. Just as that thought crossed his mind, red and blue lights flashed in his rearview mirror. His grip on the wheel tightened. He pulled over, heart pounding as two officers approached. Miller, the stocky one with close-cropped blonde hair, and Tucker, taller, leaner, with a permanent scowl. "Morning, officers. Something wrong?" Elias kept his voice calm, his hands visible. "License and registration," Miller barked. Elias handed over his documents as Tucker sneered, "Your taillight's out." Elias frowned. "With all due respect, officer, I checked my lights yesterday. They were working fine." Miller's tone sharpened. "You calling my partner a liar?" "No, sir," Elias replied steadily. "Just stating a fact." "Step out of the vehicle," Miller ordered. Elias complied, moving carefully. They searched his truck, too thoroughly. Their intentions were clear. Passers-by slowed, watching an old man being harassed on the side of the road. After a long pause, Tucker finally smirked. "Well, would you look at that? Taillight's working now. Must have been a loose connection." "You're lucky this time," Miller added, handing back Elias's documents with a smirk. "Better keep everything in order, Mr. Carter. Never know when we might stop by again." Elias sat in his truck, gripping the wheel tightly as the officers drove away. He exhaled shakily, staring out at the road ahead. Back at the farm, he tried to bury himself in work, but the unease wouldn't fade. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Elias stood at the edge of his fields. Normally, this time of day brought him peace. Today, it only deepened his worry. He looked down at his hands, hands that had worked this land for decades, hands that had raised a son to fight for justice. And yet, those same hands trembled under the weight of a threat that refused to disappear. Walking back toward the house, he whispered into the darkening sky, "Lord, give me strength." Little did he know, Miller and Tucker were already planning their next move. And this time, they wouldn't stop at just intimidation.